Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Shattering Glass in Heels. I am so excited about this episode as I get to welcome and convene the Council of Queens. Please join me in welcoming my Council of Queens, Carla Messer, Chief Results Officer of Best Work, Karen Culbreath, HR Transformation Consultant at HR Concierge and Executive Director of the Period Project, Leah Eriksen, Director of Technology and Innovation and CIO for the City of Long Beach, California, and Tammy Solomon-Gray, Senior Principal, the Cheviot School-Gifted Academy West as part of Cincinnati Public Schools. Let's convene the Council of Queens. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
This is so exciting. Just to give the context to everyone, the viewers, I don't think all of us have been in this same, conversation together, have interacted together, like all of us at the same time in like 20 years. Is that fair to say? 20 years?
Close to it.
Let's do it. So this is, to me, is I would call this the reunion episode of the Council of Queens. So very, very excited. So I'm just, we all met at the YWCA Rising Stars, and I make a lot of reference to the YWCA and the Rising Stars in our book, but maybe just kind of give a round robin to like everyone around, just how you got involved with the Y, and just a little bit about like your story and what you do, because we all come from all these diverse backgrounds. So I'm going to start with you, Miss Carla. So go ahead.
It was a unique opportunity to participate as a rising star. I was nominated by a colleague when I worked for an outplacement organization in Cincinnati. I had come off a layoff from a large corporation and was really in a time of renaissance. And one of my colleagues nominated me to participate in it. And I had really no idea the kind of sisterhood that participation would create. Not only did I go through the Rising Star program with my cohort, but then the board leadership program that ensued afterwards. So it really was the starting point for some solid long-term relationships, or as you call it, the Council of Queens. So
that sounds great. And then Miss Tammy, I'll go to you next.
Okay, so I had the wonderful opportunity and the great fortune of actually having a would-be mother-in-law who was this huge giant in banking and industry. And she thought highly of me as a teacher. So I was a classroom teacher at the time that I was inducted into the first class of Rising Stars with the YW. And from there, I just continued to take advantage of those relationships and got interested in board leadership. And so went through that same program with, I believe, Carla and Karen and you, Christine, and maybe you, Leah. We were maybe a part of that first inaugural class of the board leadership training for the YW. So that was really huge. I've served on several boards since then, and it's been very elevating for me professionally. It's not an opportunity that professional educators get to have often, which is unfortunate. So I love being in that space and representing, and I've got so many tools from that great experience.
Awesome. Leah, I'll turn to you.
Oh, yeah. So in my story, I was nominated to be a Rising Star by the city manager of the city of Cincinnati. And I was at the time an individual contributor working in the city manager's office, and didn't really even think of myself as a leader. And so really, I see the Rising Star program as like the first step on my leadership journey, where another female leader believed in me. She nominated me for the program. I was accepted. I got to meet all these other incredible female leaders, including all of you. And, was, just like the other ladies here, just very like my first step in my journey of leadership. And from there, that led to other nominations and board service, over the last, at this point now, 18 years. So, I'm really happy that the YWCA has this type of program, and happy to be joining all of you today.
And it's your turn, Ms.
So
Taryn.
I first was introduced to the YWCA when I was serving as the HR director for a local nonprofit there in Cincinnati. My executive director at the time and CEO had the opportunity to have some interactions with the YWCA and suggested that I go through the program as well, and nominated and supported me financially to go through the program. So I was really excited about the opportunity. Needless to say, the rest is history. After I met you all, my life has been forever changed, and I'm so excited that I learned what I learned and had the opportunity to serve on several boards and also start and have my own business. So it's been great.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm also very grateful about my experience with the YWCA. I think I was one of the younger ones because, yeah, I was shy of the age requirement when I got nominated. But it was also a time when I really started to open my eyes around the concept of eliminating racism and empowering women. And I think it was super great to be at the forefront of my career, to have that exposure and have that exposure to career women, and to have the exposure to that kind of dialogue, and to also meet all of you guys, to have that support system throughout my career. I most certainly would not be where I am if it wasn't for all of you, just seeing me through all the different aspects and phases of my life. I just want to talk to you guys about, I was talking to the YWCA, someone from the YWCA the other day, and talking about how special this is. And they've never really heard the story of, how we were part of the first board leadership class, and just really shocked that we have this established friendship of over 20 something years, and excited to hear the story of that sisterhood and the Council of Queens. And I don't know what it was about that first board leadership class or what it was, but there was definitely something special about that class, because I don't think they've kind of, I don't know, maybe it was because of the first that really kind of replicated that same kind of sisterhood. So gonna go around, like, what was it about that? I mean, that bond, and that started that spark for all of us from a relationship perspective, that essentially created this amazing network and sisterhood between us. So I don't know who wants to start first. Tammy, I'll shoot over to you.
Well, I feel like I'm laughing because I'm remembering some of my anecdotes. I am the queen of the anecdotes, and they just kind of landed comically, but they were very serious and really contributed to. Because a lot of times when you're serving on boards, especially not-for-profit boards, you're either serving families or children or community. So I had a front row seat to that as a classroom educator. And so I think for me, what made that experience so rewarding was just the diversity of thought. Everyone was coming from a different space, different careers, different generations for our group, and yet there was this great bond that was woven between us, because we all desire to make significant changes in spaces where change seemed to be stagnant. And it was just the same old, old dusty, oh, you have to be from this place, or you have to know these people to be in these spaces. But meanwhile, you're serving people who you're not necessarily all that interested in or connected with. So I think we all had that in common, and just really reinforced our bond. So that, for me, that was the big thing. Just, we all had that drive. We wanted to make a significant impact and difference in not-for-profit work that supports women and families.
Yeah, that's great. Leah, I'll turn into you as well.
Yeah, so actually, Christine, I don't know if I was on the board leadership program or the emergent. I felt it was the advisory committee with you, like the Rising Star Advisory Committee. Is that the same thing as the board? okay, maybe it was a different,
Either way, we were always around each other, and there's a picture of all of us really sweaty dancing at one of my weddings.
Yes. Yeah. And so I feel like, Christine, like you are the nucleus that has brought us all together. The YWCA, the Rising Star Program has definitely brought us all together. And there was, what I remember was serving on an advisory committee, and I think that led to, you know, the board leadership program and another thing, and here it is, what, 20, almost 20 years later. Yeah, that we are all still together. And even though I don't personally see Carla or Tammy or Karen, Facebook friends, and so we're still always connected. Yeah, and definitely the sisterhood, and just the being with other women leaders, is definitely very refreshing and very needed because I really believe in like we lift as we climb, and that mission.
I love that because actually, Leah, we lost touch for a little bit because you have moved out west and I've moved to New York, and Karen, you also went to North Carolina, so we all kind of went in our lives, but we would always talk to each other. Carla is probably the one I like call frequently on speed dial all half the time. But I remember I said to Carla, I think I'm thinking about moving to California, and she was the one who actually said, "Hey, you know who's out there? You should reach out to her." And I was at that point, I was just me thinking, I was just visiting. And I reached out to you, Leah, on Facebook, and you were more than happy and gracious to come meet out and hang out with me for dinner. And it's funny to like full circle, Carla, like you were the one who kind of encouraged us to kind of get back together. Here we are. Now, Leah and I live down the street from each other. And, like it's just, you kind of go full circle in those kind of moments. So that's pretty exciting. Of just, you're right. We don't probably talk to each other all the time. We see each other on Facebook and each other's lives, but there's still kind of like that bond where we just pick up wherever we left off. And Karen, that's the same with us too. We haven't talked in for long, and now it's like, you just, it seemed like time never really passed by, and you just are able to kind of pick up where you left off. I'm gonna turn it to Karen and Carla because the two of you, Tammy's like, oh no. Like, I don't know if there's some switching action going on here, but most certainly during the board leadership thing, the two of you were so like hilariously comical and just authentically honest and unapologetic about everything that we're talking about race, and I think that was one of the pieces where I just laughed so hard, and we all laughed together, and I think that was kind of like one of the things that also kind of bonded us. But I'm gonna go Carla, Karen. I know how you two roll, so you'll tag team, so I'll let you go. Go ahead, Carla.
Well, I probably had more aspirations towards building my network when I was nominated into the Rising Star Program. And then the board leadership was a way for me to really actuate my desire to be involved more in the community. And I've had a long history of being actionable in social justice kind of spaces. But what I found is that the Y and the board leadership provided some safe spaces to actually have conversations that in other corporate environments just were not happening, especially at that time. Just those conversations weren't happening. And so the Y, whether they fell into it or deliberately tried to do this, to integrate these kind of ways where we're teaching you how to be a board member, we're teaching you, governance models, and we're teaching you what the expectations are and your fiduciary responsibilities, but also forcing these uncomfortable at times conversations in a safe space. And so, for me, when I think about what that space meant to me at that time, it meant that I was going to be building a group of people that I could lean into to have these kinds of conversations or to really join hands with, because, as we all have taken on projects, and Karen's period project is so amazing. I mean, this is just like, the most amazing grassroots kind of effort that she's leading. And so when I think about how those early conversations of us stepping out in some moments of trust and hoping not to step in it, because they were conversations that you could step in it. Right. And And then to see all of us thrive and be able to call on each other, or, to me to lean in on, a couple of you for teaching, support in my role as a professor, it's just really exceeded what I came there to do, which was to build my network a little bit. Right. And so it really did create the first safe space for me in Cincinnati to begin forging different kinds of
You all
conversations.
gave all the nice political ways of talking about this. Let's just say we were authentically blessed, and we enjoyed having adult libations together at some point where we could just be ourselves. And we were and
Alcohol
and
might have been
because of
involved.
that, we quickly bonded with understanding we could be who we are and not having to be anyone else and still be accepted by a group of wonderful women. We were not in competition with each other. We were definitely lifting each other up. We went up, we came down, we went up again, but never to the point that when you were in a bad spot, you didn't have a phone call you could make. And so it was incredibly important at the beginning. And, some of us were going through life-changing moments at that time. And it was an opportunity to say, regardless of what's going on, you have a good network of sisters that are going to be here to support you. And guess what? It's been true for over 20 years, whether we talk every day or we wait and we just pick up the phone and say, hey, I need this, or I need you, or what are your thoughts about this? And I really, if I had to frame it, it's called being authentically blessed. There was no way they could have scripted or known that this was going to happen. Maybe should do a little research on us, give us a little money, do something to help us be compensated for this so we can stop working. But however, I think it is just that, I know Carla and I did the little exchange, and I mean, it broke the ice. I really think that was the point that we said, hey, we can be curious about each other's background. We can be curious and really take the opportunity to collaborate on what it is that we see as our success. And again, we weren't looking for money. We were just looking for us to grow our careers to the next level. We had some wonderful, I can't even say how excited I was to be in a room with some of the leaders that we had at the time. They were the who's of women in Cincinnati. And to be able to sit at those tables and learn from them is unbelievable. But I think now, 20-something years later, look at us. We are those women that are setting the standards. So it was a special time.
Now, actually, I'm going to talk about that moment because I need to explain that to the audience as well. Like, we're all just kind of laughing, and it's the secret for us. But there's actually something really significant about that moment that I thought about when I was writing that book, and because it brought me back to that. So to your point, we were going through some of us were going through some life transitions. I was most certainly one of them, going through divorce and going through kind of the what's next in my life and my career kind of thing, right? But we were also having these heavy conversations around empowering women and heavy conversation around race and racism. And I think there's no easy way to approach that conversation, especially if you're trying to do it in a board leadership. And when you're bringing that group of diverse people, I think there's always a way of like, how do you not offend someone? I mean, Karen, you do diversity training, so I'm sure like this kind of comes in. But then the moment that we're talking about to the audience is that there was role-playing assignments that we were given. We were put into groups and we were asked to come into role-playing assignments and really asked to literally think about what are the challenges, right? Being someone from the BIPOC community that people probably don't understand that, you can kind of lean on. And everyone in the groups took on the traditional roles. Like my group was like, okay, I'm the Asian woman, I will take that on, and everyone else kind of went in. These two, Karen and Carol, come up. They're having this dialogue. Well, and I just well, I think I find really offense about what you said. But Carla totally switched on and said, Karen, as an American woman, I am very insulted. It was a complete role reversal. And I think half the faces in the room were just like, oh my God, did that just happen? Is that okay? And I was like looking at each other, and I just laughed because I thought that was like, yes, A on the acting, go. But I think it was one of the moments where we took a moment with just this took the barriers down. Like, let's have an authentic conversation about this. It's okay to fumble. And I appreciated it because I was also a point in my life where I was trying to learn and understand the complex histories within the United States. I didn't grow up in the United States. So and that was important for me as well, to understand all the complicated histories around African Americans and other, immigrants and natives within the US and what those stories are. And I just really appreciated the fact that you guys said it was okay to fumble, okay to have this open dialogue and really facilitate learning. And so that was momentous to me. I'm like, we laugh about it because it was really great. And of course, after that, it was like, oh, we're all going to happy hour because it was such a high. But I think it was moments like that that allowed us all to kind of bond and have those conversations and meaningful conversations. And so, and I still appreciate the fact that, if I'm fumbling over something, and even when I was writing the book and trying to come back with these concepts, like, I have this safe space, like, to just even have this conversation. Leah, you and I have had like conversations where we're like, gosh, is this really happening? We're just like gut checking ourselves with some of these concepts. And I know I have that safe space to really think it through and have someone else tell me honestly, what am I missing, or help me understand. And I think that's the piece about conversations about race and diversity, equity, inclusion that's lacking, where people don't have that authenticity or are scared to kind of fumble. I don't know if anyone else has like a thought around that. I've always thought it's okay to fumble within the safe space. I'd rather that you fumble and have someone course correct you than you not, change or turn a blind eye and just go about it. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in again.
Well, first of all, as a point of clarity, there was no way Karen was not letting me be that in the role play. Like, I had no choice. I was like, no. She's like, no, you're going to be this role. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'll be this role, right? And so again, she's just challenging, right? Right from the get-go at the beginning, challenging.
Well, I have
and
an eye
it
for
was
talent,
good. It was
Carla,
meaningful.
and I knew you would be great at it.
Or
But
did you
more
go with it?
importantly, one thing we hear in the African American community is everyone has a Black friend. And that's what they say, I can't be racist because I have a Black friend. I knew then none of you all were going to leave out of there embarrassing your Black friends. And so it was important for us to build the relationship where it could be authentic, and you had a resource. You were our allies, and we were able to work together, ask questions. If you were somewhere and you didn't know something, I wanted you to pick up the phone, as opposed to embarrassing me being one of your Black friends. And so if I didn't open up and say, hey, let's talk about this, I'm sure somebody down the road would have been like, you know what, that girl you hang out with, let me tell you what she did. So again, what good is a friendship if it's not reciprocal? And it was really important to me that if I'm going to consider you a friend, you better know this stuff. And we're going to live it together.
Yeah. It was good.
Tammy's falling off her chair. I'm going to let you talk, but before I let you talk, Tammy is like, she says the queen of anecdotes, but she's the queen of subtle sass. I say that because I learned so much subtle sass from you. I remember you and she goes, Christine, I hear that you're saying, she goes, there's 2 words you need to learn in your life and it'll take you everywhere. Do you remember this, Tammy?
Oh, yes. That's unfortunate. Yes.
Like Leah, this is good words for us. You're like, that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. You can say that's unfortunate. So I got away with it. It was just like, oh, but Tammy, I'll let you. I know the sass is about to come out, and we're coming at it. So yeah.
Okay, so maybe a little sass. So what's interesting is that's unfortunate actually emerged during my classroom teacher days when, I'd have a kid saying, oh, I didn't bring my homework or I left it at home. That's unfortunate. I don't see it. So it's not real for me. This is not church. This is not religion. I don't see it. It's not real. So it's unfortunate, but you're going to have that 0. So And now, I've been an administrator now, school administrator for 14 years. No, oh my, 15 years. So I having a staff of nearly 90 people. Um, yeah, I get to use that with great regularity still. I have wordsmithed that some. Um, hmm, that's interesting. What do you think you're going to do about that? Because that sounds like something that really is going to require some self-talk, some thinking things out. But when I am in different situations, I'm like, oh, that is unfortunate. What is the outcome that you're seeking? And it really does help me, has helped me. I know it's comical right now. And, just globally speaking, after the meetings, I feel very good about things because I said what I said. It is unfortunate because something I've learned in 15 years is that, and some very experienced people have told me this in different ways, different anecdotes, but people will come to you and they'll bring you in their little pet that's on their shoulder, that's on their back. And they want to sit that pet on your desk.
Mhm.
They want you to put that thing on your back. And you can't do that. Not to be effective in your spaces. So you take a look at the pet. You say, wow, that's interesting. Having trouble with the pet. Well, isn't that unfortunate? Well, do you have any solutions about how you should take care of your pet? Oh, well, let me give you some think time on that. And then circle back with me. I have an open door policy. So circle back and we could talk about how we're going to address that, how you're going to address that. Okay? Thank you for giving me an opportunity to help you problem solve. Have a wonderful rest of your day. So,
Saying it in the context of academia because that's where it goes. But like, I can't tell you how many times I've kind of used that same tactic in corporate America, and that's really helped. And I think it's helped me pause to not react, and just like, to let them react. So, okay, Leah, I'll turn it to you because you and I've had so many conversations around, just climbing up the corporate ladder of where we are, and I mean, you're the CIO of the city of Long Beach. It's pretty awesome. And being a woman in technology and as well as in government public spaces, I can only imagine some of the challenges that you've had. Maybe you want to just really talk a little bit about the why and kind of a little bit of your journey today, and how that maybe has helped, and just a little bit of your story.
Yeah, so thank you, Christine, for that question. As I mentioned earlier, when the city manager, who was, by the way, the first female African American city manager for the city of Cincinnati, when she tapped me for the Rising Star Program, really was the first time anyone kind of saw me as a leader or saw my potential, and that led to other opportunities like being not named to a 40 under 40 class like a year later, and then more connections, with like as it was mentioned, other powerful women leaders, in the city, and and then when I had my first actual opportunity, really, it was in 2008 to be the budget director for the city. I had more confidence, in my abilities to do that. And I've been in leadership roles, ever since that. But one of the things I've learned over the years is that the work of leadership doesn't have to, you don't have to have the title to be a leader, and so, but really, anyone can be a leader, and, leading people, leading self, is critically important. Um, you know, so I came over to City of Long Beach also as the budget director, and it was about 6 years ago that I pivoted to be the technology and innovation director. And technology is a generally male-dominated field. And actually there was a few years too back in Cincinnati where I was in economic development, and that was also traditionally a male-dominated field. So I've definitely been in those spaces where I'm like the only female in a room. And so 6 years ago, going from a non-technology role to a technology role, there was I was concerned that maybe there would have been some questions, about my expertise because I wasn't a technologist. But really, like the student manager at the time, he by the way, most of my mentors over my career have been male, so very few female sponsors. But Valerie Lemmy, that was the city manager in Cincinnati, she was a female sponsor for me. But he said, that he looked at my problem solving skills, and he looked at my partnership, with the partner, the departments, and my people focused leadership. And he said, that's what's needed right now in the technology department. And we were facing really huge challenges and big technology projects and initiatives. And so I was tapped as interim at first, but then 6 months later, there was actually a period of time where I had a little bit of imposter syndrome, because I was like, well, I'm an effective leader, but I'm still not the CIO. I'm not the technologist. But a female director at the city, she was like telling me, hey, are you crazy? You're doing the role. You're doing the role. You've been doing it for 6 months. You got to throw your hat in that ring and you apply for that permanent job. So I did, got it, and that was almost 5.5 years ago. So but I've definitely had I've been in very complex situations and being sometimes the only female in the room, but I've been able to navigate those because of having confidence in myself and my leadership skills, and realizing that people are what matter. And one thing I was really struck with, Christine, in your book, was how you were talking about how you lead with love. And I've never thought of it like that, but I think that's kind of what it is. Is like, in my people focused approach, I'm leading with love. And so, I don't know if you wanted to talk more about that, or, but that really inspired me when I read that in your book. And I thought if I put a word to it, that would be what, I've been doing, and naturally, and not even realizing I was doing it.
Yeah, no, we can stick to that. And it was Kathy Beecham who told me that. And so Kathy was, the formidable force of the rising stars at the YWCA. And she was the one who led the board leadership. And, that changed my life because I met Kathy. And she's been like my mentor, my mom, and everything else. And it's just really sad that, she's no longer with us and she's passed away. But there isn't a moment that goes by that I don't know that she's not watching over me, for sure. So it's kind of funny. I was at the gym yesterday and someone said to me, I just got through the chapter about you talking about Kathy. And he was like, I just talked about to like when I lost my parents and all this stuff. Like it really hit me. I had to put pause on listening to he was listening to the audiobook, because he goes, that must have been really tough. And it's one of those things where like, I haven't really thought about that. I remember reading about it, but where that kind of resonated. But the lead with love thing was something that was really big with her. And I wrote in the book, like I didn't understand it at the time when she said it, that I changed the word love to passion because that was more digestible for me at that time. And then now I think it's taking me a while to really understand it and what that means. And I think I'm at a point where in my life where it's like, okay, yeah, because my definition of love was also very skewed, which is also the reason why I couldn't understand it. But I want to talk about that, right? Because I think it is the power that we bring as women to the corporations or the work that we do. There is that nurturing aspect of us that we think about things a lot differently. And I think that that's kind of important and also needed from an authenticity perspective. I'm just going to open it up and see if anyone else wants to jump in around that. So kind of comment and expand on that. But that's kind of my thoughts around it. So Darren, Tammy, really, I know this group can talk.
Well, when you speak about leading with love, that's really actually one of my cornerstone things. So one thing that is not in my title, which I have to definitely get with either Karen or Carla to help me to wordsmith this, because I have become an influencer in shared leadership development in school buildings. I've taken this program that is based on Franklin Covey's or Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective. It's called The Leader in Me. And we were the first school in Southwest Ohio to do it. And basically, the whole premise is believing that every person, you have to love people to believe in their potential positively, that everyone can be a leader now, not in 5 or 10 years when they have achieved something or they're a certain age, but right now, that they are leaders, that they have that potential. And so it's not even just the children, it's the adults. And so a lot of times when you're in spaces where you're leading, Leah talked about this. They can be great in their position, and they have this unconscious competence in their spaces. And so when you invite them to do something else along with what they're doing, it comes from a love space. Like, I see this in you. Yes, someone can just come in and see that you're good at this, but no, I see this, and I see even more in you. And so the leading with love, that's where that takes shape. And seeing that someone stands in the space where they can manifest and should manifest even greater things because you see it in them.
To piggyback on what Tammy just shared, when we are speaking with organizations and I'm speaking with leaders, I'm often sharing with leaders about how to seek to know their team. And in order to do that, you have to be curious about who that person is inside and outside of work. And once you get to know people for who they are, you understand that they lead every day. So it's not a moment in time where they have to build toward. You have to look at what their strengths are at that time that they're already using that can be built upon. And as a leader, I find it very important and critical for you to know your team and build upon that. Everyone does not want to lead people, but there's processes to be led. There's events. There's lots of things that you can really use those strengths to help encourage someone to grow and transition. And when Leah was speaking, I wanted to talk about just transitioning. Oftentimes, we don't know that transition is coming, but women are often prepared more than they think they are. But because we feel like we have to have 100% of everything, as opposed to the 45% some of our male counterparts have, we don't take the opportunity. We have to lead and live and learn in a transformative mindset. And that transformative mindset is, if I'm in the event, if I'm in the room, I can bring change. My presence alone is enough for improvement. And when we look at ourselves and know ourselves as such, we know transition, no matter what it is, we're prepared for it and we're going to have a positive impact on it.
Carla?
You know, I have a PhD in leadership, and at the same time, you can be learned and still feel like you know nothing about leadership, because every day you get new opportunities to see leadership manifesting itself in new and different ways. But, and I think at the root of some of the work at the Y is really, as a board leader, you're being taught to be a servant leader. And that has always resonated with me, is to be a servant leader. And I've been the board chair at an emergency shelter for 14 years. And that has really taught me what being a servant leader looks like. It's one thing to to want to be in a position where you are serving and helping others. It's another when you're really living the value of giving people that idea of a second chance, or, being in the trenches and, doing all of it, shoveling dirt and running the board meetings. And so, for me, when I think about leading with love, I think about servant leadership and transformational leadership too. Is, those are the people who, as Leah kind of led with this, is that those are the people whose leadership style is to help others be successful, to lift up others, to transform the team through helping each person be the best version of themselves. And so both of those kind of leadership models, transformational and servant leadership, I think are rooted in leading with love. And again, we all got a little bit of I was older when I was in the board leadership in the Y program. So you were at the bottom of the age group and I was at the very top of the age group. So I was already on a board and had served on some boards, but it really helped to elevate or, kind of level up my board participation through the program there, and reinforced really that servant leadership mentality.
Thanks for this, right? Because when I wrote that, and even today when I'm looking back at this, Leah, thanks for bringing it up. Like, to use the word love took a lot of courage for me to even write or even say, and even the way that we're speaking about this, because it's an emotional word. And, as women, you're taught not to bring that emotion to the boardroom. And, it conjures up so many different things. But I don't know how else to characterize it. But for me, it was a big aha moment, because the way that I grew up and the way that I thought about love was always very transactional. It was something that you had to earn or deserve. And for so much of my life and my career, that was like kind of the ambition that drove me. Like every accolade, every success, what I thought was a currency that you got from love, or like even the financial rewards that you reaped out of the success was love. And you guys know I'm twice divorced. So like, obviously there was a lot of even things within those relationships, early relationships of mine, that was really difficult for me to understand that. And so I think, the story of what has happened and what has transpired me in the last, 3 to 5 years of my life, and what also led the impetus to me writing this book, was also a transformation for me to understand what that was. Because paradoxes, right? Like, I have this idea that love is something that you have to be earned, but then you guys also know in my nature, I'm just this generous, loving being who would just always do anything and be there for you. But if it was to receive, was something so hard for me to accept. And so in some weird ways, like, I had to learn how to receive, to break down those barriers of what that is, and also understand what it really meant to lead with love, and to really come into a much more comfortable sense of being in my skin and really my authentic self. And weirdly enough, was when I broke down the barrier and decided to come out as like the very vulnerable, leader in a corporate environment that you guys know from being off. That's when things started to change for me. That's when I started to see people like resonate with me different. My teams resonate with me different. And where I started to get some success and better success by building relationships and authentic relationships and community. And then on the other hand of it, like, I also see a lot of folks within the corporate side thinking that's like building a clique or something like that, really threatened by that, authenticity that was also kind of coming out of building that, kind of warm culture. But I think that was where it comes back to me. It's like, at the end of the day, no matter what we do, like, business is about people. And how do you not see people and deal with people for where they are, and lead with love? And so, I think that was part of it. And I think I started to understand that a little bit more, with Kathy, who's just such a great people person, about that. But, it's taken me a while to get to that. And, but hearing you guys' story about like just some of these traits that a lot of males or male counterparts or even corporate America feel threatened about by being a woman, this, vulnerability, the emotion around it. Talk to me about it, guys. Everyone here comes from a very different background, but has your own stories within your own industries of, breaking those glass ceilings. I mean, how do you guys feel about that emotion, or just like really showing up authentically as a woman? How do you guys see that disparity? I mean, Leah, I'll start with you, because male-dominated fields and tech, you and I have that in common. And, how do you say that you show up as your authentic self?
Yeah, well, I definitely am authentic, and open and approachable. Those are like characteristics I'm known as, at the city. And what that looks like for me is, actually speaking up in meetings, and yes-anding, others when I feel like they're being ignored, and um, not letting, maybe silence in a room stop me from speaking up again. And I had a lot of confidence when I came to the city of Long Beach because I was the budget director in Cincinnati for 8 years. And when I first came to Long Beach, I was in the same role. And but people weren't really they weren't used to me, and they were like, "Who is this person? Who's over here speaking up in the directors' meetings?" In fact, I insisted that I needed to be at the table. And I wasn't literally at the table, but I was in the room because actually in Long Beach, the financial management department has the budget office. So technically, I was the budget, manager under the finance director. But I insisted on having that, space in the room and spoke up. And what I found out later was that I was um, I was looked up to by other women in the room. They were very happy that they would tell me afterwards, "Thank you for speaking up, and I'm glad you keep on talking. And wow, you're so proud and you're so brave." And I'm just like, "Well, this is me. This is who I am. I have things to say, and people need to hear them." So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the
There you
things
go.
we talked about in
Karen,
a
I'll let you go.
previous podcast is labels, and not owning a label of someone else. And when I listen to Lee and people are saying, like, oh, it's out of the norm or it's not something that a woman will do, it's important for us to continue to shatter those myths that a woman can only be a certain way, or this is what you should expect. And that what we're doing, I know all of us are, at least when we're in those spaces, that what we are doing is really normalize how women are and what they have to contribute. It should not be that we have to in any way retreat in order to be accepted, but it should be that we're welcomed and that the various unique aspects of us are definitely appreciated and valued. So as we have the opportunity in the positions that we are, it's important that we are also doing that for others. Because if we don't model that, then it will never normalize to the point that it needs to be.
Yeah. Pam?
Well, this is so critically important for us to show up in our spaces authentically as ourselves. There were times when women did not have, it was a luxury for something that men were able to do or still able to do with great regularity. Oh, well, that's Bob. No. So now at my space, in my spaces, well, that's Solomon-Gray. So that's my extended moniker. When we became Rising Stars, I was Tammy Solomon, and in the space that I'm in now, I stand up. I don't just stand up for adults, but I have to stand up for children. And you would be sadly surprised at the desire for adult comfort over academic achievement for all children. How you go on vacation, how you eat whatever you want to eat, you drive whatever you want to drive at their expense, but you are not focused on every child. It's unacceptable. But I bring that from the space of being second generation Great Migration African American, and from being in a space of, hey, don't no, don't look at me like, oh well, they could all be like that. No, ma'am, no, sir. That's not the case. I'm an outlier. And really standing in that truth and helping people understand no, no, and no. If we get paid to serve all children, then we're going to serve all children. If you have discomfort with serving all children, you should find another industry, because I don't want you to be in front of anyone else's children, urban, suburban, rural, parochial, charter. It doesn't matter. All children, all the time. And that passion comes from that space of who I am as a person, what my roots are. And the thing that I think is misunderstood by people who are not in our village, in our council, is that the more you know about who you are and where you're from and what matters to you, what matters to your family, where you come from, your foundation, you have such a greater appreciation, because you recognize that everyone has a foundation. Everyone has a starting point. Everyone has those stories of those foremothers and the forefathers who made this bold choice to do something different. And that's what put you in position to do what you do today, which is their wildly and amazing dreams. It was just a dream for them. And so when we're in the spaces, when I'm in my educational spaces, leadership spaces, I show up authentically, because there's someone who, like in Leah's spaces and Karen's spaces and Carla's spaces, they're us 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. And they need to hear that someone like them has that voice, and that they too have that capacity, and that their voice is needed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the space.
Carla, how about you?
I don't know what to say after that, except for that, I really admire all the moments that I've had a chance to listen to Tammy and Karen both be unapologetically forthright. And, part of that conversation and the little role play is about crucial conversations. These are difficult conversations that we need to have. And so I do think that is the difference between those who rise and those who do not, is the willingness to step into the murky middle sometimes, and to have those difficult conversations in order for us to come out better on the other side. And, when we hold back, when we limit, whether we're self-limited or when other people step in to try to limit us, then we all lose, right? And so I feel like all of us have the ability and the intellect also to be able to stand on our own merits and to be authentic because of that hard work, because of, right, standing on the laurels of other people who have helped us to move to this space. And I love knowing all of your stories. I love that you know mine. And it really is about what Leah started the conversation earlier about, is being approachable, creating some safe places for people to not feel shame or less than, when we're trying to solve problems together. And, that at the heart of it is authenticity, right? Is being able just to bring our whole selves to the table.
Yeah. I'm going to play devil's advocate for a little bit, because, the book's been out for a while. And again, I'm getting feedback. And one of the things that I heard, right, from some women, right, it's easy to have this conversation here because we all kind of grew up early in our careers with the moniker of like lifting as we climb, and really embrace that. And that's really the foundation of the sisterhood in the Council of Queens. And people have approached me and said, you're so lucky to have that, because the reality of what they've experienced, and not to say that none of us have experienced, because this is true, is the bitter side of female relationships, which is female rivalry. And I also wrote about that because there is a dark side to female rivalry, and it's been there for a really long time. And one of the reasons why we have, this kind of competition and a few seats that we have in corporate America, because even history dictates that there can only be one queen. And I was talked a little bit about, I think I wrote in the book, when one woman has it better, another woman has it bitter. Right. And there's a little bit of a truth to that. And so I kind of want to go around this circle, right, to talk a little bit about, like, again, this is a unique situation from how we grew up and how we all kind of started, where that authenticity of Lift As You Climb was like the moniker for it. But for the people who are listening to this, right, and really thinking about female rivalry, like, what's your thoughts on that? How do we change that dynamic? And how have you kind of dealt with female rivalry as well? In your climb, in your careers, and how do you best address that? And I'm looking across the room. I'm gonna leave you, Karen, for last, just because, like, you deal with this all the time from your work, and I think that you can answer this from a macro level. But I'll start with you, Tammy. So
Well,
that's unfortunate.
yeah, it is unfortunate. It is. It really is. And
I'm gonna behave now, but it's true. It is. That would be an appropriate use of "that's unfortunate."
yes, but in more sincere searching, seeking first to understand, I actually do understand it. A lot of times, and I've actually, wow, sometimes you get farther on down the pathway and you forget, if you're forward leaning and walking, sometimes you forget that you were stabbed and almost left for dead. And actually, I've had that happen to me professionally by a woman. And it was sad because when we make presumptions as women of other women on maybe why people gravitate towards them, and then we perceive that woman as a threat, and that the threats have to be eliminated. This is not the battlefield. I am not your enemy. And so I think one way that I've learned to counter that, because at the time that I had the experience that I had, and this woman, she was in a position of leadership over me, and she perceived some moves I was making academically to earn my principal's license as going after her presumptive next position, which was far from the truth. And that led to really damage to my career path. And so while we're the Council of Queens, I had my very forward-thinking husband ask me while I was fighting for my career. He said, "So what do you want? I support you, whatever you want to do, but what do you want?" First, I said, "I want my job back." No, you don't. What do you want? I want to be a principal." Okay. So in what world do you think that school district undisclosed location is going to promote you to principal after you've taken them to court? They've paid out damages and paid your attorney's fees. In what reality do you think that's going to happen? And so when I think about women not caring for women, even if we aren't going to be besties, the first thing we had to do is look to do no harm. If there's no fruit there, okay, but let's look to do no harm. Let's look to find another circle, because sometimes you're just not everyone's cup of tea, not yet. But then there's someone else that will come into your circle. I had that happen. I have a beautiful, enduring sisterhood friendship with a woman who's also a senior status principal like myself. And we like to listen to content instead of being over there talking about what someone was wearing. And we take our careers very seriously. And so we bonded. And so I think when you find yourself as a woman, you find yourself in a space in which, you know, the red carpet is not being rolled out to you, people aren't extending their hands down the ladder to lift you up, hang out on that room. Do grow in that space. And in time, if you keep looking around, you will see that person that's meant to do that climb with you, that's going to help you climb, and you will help them climb. And that's how you expand the sisterhood. That's how you increase the queendom.
Carla,
So,
I'm gonna look at you.
well,
Oh, you're right.
I was going to jump in because Tammy, you said expand the sisterhood, and it reminded me of like viewing the world full of abundance as opposed to scarcity. And if you feel like there's only so many spots, and we're competing, that could explain the, better versus bitter, but if you look at the world as full of abundance, and there's more, there's, we can, we lift as we climb, we can help pull up other women, and we can, you create more space, for us to sit. And by the way, I did make it to the table. When I finally became the technology and innovation director, I was at the table. But more spaces for the table, and if the table's not big enough, we'll make the table even bigger. And I've been fortunate that I haven't been in very many situations where I felt like directly threatened by other women. But maybe that's me being naive, because one of the other things that I call this my secret sauce is I go around life acting as if everybody likes me. And, until I find out they really don't. But even then, like if you give the benefit of the doubt and you act as if they like you, um, it actually is kind of a refreshing approach to interactions. It's easier to not take something personally until you find out for sure it is, and then you have to take an action or draw a boundary or other things. But I I find that it actually works, that that the people I'm interacting with, I act as if I like them because I actually do like them. That's where the lead with love. I do see people's potential and I can give them grace, and so I just have very positive working relationships with that. And I haven't, I've been lucky, I think, but I think that's worked for me, and and if you look at my leadership team, for example, that, I work, with my direct reports, 50% of my leadership team in the technology department is female, so I'm, and yeah, I'm basically creating a bigger table for the best leaders.
Welcome. Carla, then Karen.
You know, when you first posed the question, I immediately thought, when they go low, we go high kind of mentality. And I really do try to, kill them with kindness. So when I feel like someone is trying to unseat me or knock me down, I look for ways to build them up and give them more opportunity as a strategy, really, of just trying to understand what's at the root of this rivalry, right? And just show we've got lead with love and show the opportunity to continue to open up space for them. And it doesn't always work. Let's face it. Some people are gung ho for, and you have to be able to lick your wounds and move on.
When I think about it, it's always about choice and respect. If someone is authentically being themselves and they've made a decision that they don't like me, I respect their decision. Because one thing I don't want people to feel that I will ever do is change who I am to please them. I always, much like what Carla just shared, I always try to see what the root of the situation is. But there are some times that we are fundamentally different. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to be disrespectful to one another, but it's just that we're different. And, at this point in time, it's not time for us to, mend those differences. It happens. But there's also this thing called the boomerang effect. When that happens and they get to see who you are and who you are consistently, they're like, oh, well, yeah, that is a person I would want to know. Or, yeah, that person is someone who can support me and help me. And then I'm waiting right there and I'm like, oh, okay, now you're calling me back. But remember, that terrible person that you had just seen whatever amount of time ago, she's still the same person. So really, is this the choice that you want to make? Because I'm not changing. You're not going to change. But if you're not able to see things differently, then I respect your choice. I've had those situations happen a few times. And each and every time it is, I respect you, but I need you to respect me enough to make sure you understand I'm not going to change for you. And I know the stab wounds in the back. I've seen it in the professional sense. And I do believe that when you have women who show up and they show up in a way that others do not, there is a level of envy. And that envy often turns into jealousy for no reason at all. And so I do try to make sure that I'm lifting everyone up, even my enemies, because I have no reason to treat them any differently. And they're not an enemy of mine. I am an enemy of theirs. And because of that, I'm really taking the opportunity to say, hey, still, how can I help you? Because in the workplace, my personality difference does not prevent us from getting the work done. And I want them to see that I'm still very supportive of whatever it takes to get the work done. And each and every time that boomerang effect has taken place, and they're like, well, I didn't see you like that at first. Well, just because you didn't have your lenses clean don't mean that it's because I wasn't shining. So that's how I see this situation.
Last two questions and we go, but again, I'm so fortunate. We're all so fortunate to have the sisterhood and have kind of grown up together. I'm like, it's mind-boggling to say that it's 20-something years since that. And as we all even having this conversation about looking back of like where we are and kind of where we are in our careers, it's almost, it's almost like you're living someone else's life and it's like a dream. When you grow up with someone. But for the young women and young people listening to this and the people who have said, you're so lucky to have found that. And even maybe some of the rising stars who are listening to this, right? Like, how did you guys get to that special sauce of like that sisterhood? And, what would you say to them? What advice would you give to them, right? In terms of trying to develop those relationships, that sisterhood, that community. You guys say I was a nucleus to it. I'm always the first one to say, let's go. Caprine has chips and salsa is always a great idea. Anytime there's chips and salsas and drinks is always a great idea. And I think that was a little bit of, part of my personality of just, I like to drag people along and I will always reach out and, bring people along with me. That's, I think, one of my special powers. And I think, definitely a lot of the bonding that we've had has been outside of the sessions that we've had at the Y and over lots of drinks and chips and salsa. Great chips and salsa and Cincy. But, what would you say to those younger folks around, how do you start to kind of build that network? How do you really think about that? I tell a lot of younger people when I see them that it starts with looking around the people around the room. Like, you never know what that's going to look like. Even for my college friends, none of us knew that when we walked in a room in our first class that we would walk out like 20-something years later with, the strongest network, the strongest relationships that started from when we were kids. And I think that was also the same with her. But what would you say to other people, I guess, is and the younger folks to give them that kind of advice? Because I'm getting a lot of that, like, how do I build that network? How do I build that sisterhood? That's really amazing. So
I hate to sound like a cliche here, but
yeah.
I will share: seek commonality, explore the differences. And I say that because when I look around the room, what we had in common is something that someone has placed us in a room together. But we were all very different. And it was the differences that I think is really how we bonded, because we were so intrigued about the other person. And those differences kept us amused. And because of that, here we are. You guys are a little bit older than me, because you say 20 years later, I'm only 21. But a few years later, there's something to this. But so Tammy and I I knew Tammy's husband before I met Tammy, and wonderful guy. To me, he's my little brother. But I knew who he was, so I knew who she had to be. But I didn't know Tammy, but I had the opportunity to explore. I will never forget your wedding, Christine. I felt like your family definitely could have been at my family reunion. They were so similar and so cool. And so when you really look at exploring, where you can have that commonality, but where that difference is something that makes that person unique, you will develop those friendships. And those friendships will be foundationally authentic, and they just bloom from there. And that's all I can share, is that all of us have bloomed together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say yes. I mean, Christine was relentless about setting up times to go out, to get together, pulling people together. Every time, even when she moved to New York, every time she come to Cincinnati, we were all getting together, as many people could get together. We're going to, I have some photographs and some of the most fun memories of these just spontaneous times. And I think how many times, I could have said no or made an excuse, etc. And so when you're building a network, I think you said it really, really well, Karen, is that there are going to be people that you just gravitate to for whatever reason. Either their vibe is, similar to your vibe. You feel something that enriches your spirit by being with them. But then, once you have that connection, it still comes down to saying yes. Someone has to decide we're going to go somewhere, and where are we going, and what are we eating? And it's always food and drink. That's for sure. We know that 100%.
Mandatory.
But, I've had a million phone calls with Christine in all times of the day and night, just being a thinking partner. And, again, that comes back to saying yes. I could have ignored her phone calls, and sometimes I did. But for the most part, edit. For the most part, I'm just going to see if she's really listening. It was availability. I was available when she called, and she was available when I called. And that is powerful. Just being, in a position of yes, saying yes to the call, saying yes to the meeting, and not making an excuse is how you build, 15-year friendships. Plain and simple.
Gonna yes and Carla, say yes, and it's also be, open to where these opportunities, will lead to. And because I think you never know when one of us is going to be in each other's, needs to be like in our lives, and can be helpful and connecting to someone else. And I think being open to spending the time together, prioritizing that, that time, and being and exploring, like we are all brought together by the YWCA. There are going to be other kind of organizations like that are multidisciplinary, that bring women together, and looking for those, and then spending the time and investing the time, and I feel like those are those connections that you build are worth it, and they're worth nurturing, and they're very helpful. And I think the other thing I was going to mention, was kind of back on the other question about, female rivalry. You can also do stuff within your own organization too. Like, so it doesn't just have to be across organizational, but in my case, like I bring all the female directors together like once a quarter, and once again, it does involve food and drinking, but it's a happy hour. But if you take the initiative, to say, not to say yes when someone invites you, but to actually start something, in your own organization, you'd be surprised at how many other people will say yes, and they will, welcome that, and then you'll be starting to nurture these relationships that are outside of traditional hierarchy or roles.
Mm-hmm.
food's a great currency. People underestimate the value of food as a currency to bring people together. You look at college campuses, like no one comes out to something unless, the food is great. And even season 1 of the podcast, and I talked to my mentees, a lot of them actually also said, he goes, yeah, what bonded us together when we were on the road was like all of our culinary adventures. And so, I think it's a great place to start in terms of bonding and gives them some commonalities. But Tammy, I'll turn to you.
So, my big thing when I think about our council, but just people within my own circle, think about how you feel after you leave someone's presence that you just met in whatever space it is. If they leave you with a good feeling, not just about yourself, but just the time you spent with them, like that was a good time. When that resonates with you, when you walk away, when I walk away from events with you all, even if it's a conversation, if I see something exciting happening in you all's lives on like social media, or I get a text that someone's coming to town, I'm like, oh yay! I mean, those are your folks, those are your people. The people who leave you in your heart and in your mind thinking in a healthier space, or feeling joyful, or feeling content. Those are things that we're all that tether us just as people, as human beings, with a healthy disposition. People who leave you feeling good about the time you spent with them, about the fact that they're in your life, and you can circle back to them whenever you need to, and you're going to pick up right where you left off, which I believe is where we started with Christine. That's how you extend it, along with, and that goes along with saying yes. Even when I'm so tired. Yeah, we're all going to be tired. We're badasses. It's what we do. We go hard in the paint, and yes, we're exhausted. But guess what? Let's fill our bucket back up.
Yeah, I like how you said that you leave there with people who are making you feel good about yourselves. And there's one image in my mind that just kind of just came to me while you guys were all talking. And growing up in Cincinnati, my time at Cincinnati was bittersweet. It was full of highs and lows, a lot of heartache and pain, but a lot of growth and growing up. And when I left and I would come back, it was Carla, lecturing for your cohorts were one of the reasons why I came. But a lot of that was also anchored around Kathy. And I remember going back for the funeral, and just, of course, I was going to be there and not knowing, and just feeling so displaced around being there for her, but not really being with her, right? Like just to see, it's not, this is not me and her rolling around in the Porsche, getting skyline and graders. This is a very different thing. And I knew that you guys were behind me and were like right next to me the whole time, because you knew that you were going to catch me, that this was really hard for me. But you guys had pointed out to me that the section where I was sitting in the front as part of family, and when I looked behind me, was everyone from the Y, the Rising Stars, the career women. And that was so striking to me, that was the power that was behind me, and the community behind me, who really recognized the relationship and what I was going through, and who was going to sit behind me and lift me up. And gosh, like I just had that like moment, and just so grateful to have that again. Like, we have our sisterhood of us really kind of being in touch, but to see that, the years that I spent there, and the people who remembered me, and the different classes and the different communities within the Y, within the Career Women of Achievement, even releasing this book, that was still going to be the group of women who are going to be behind me and still truly lift me as I climb or lift me in that moment. I think it was still one of the most powerful moments in my life and forever grateful. So, gosh, so emotional. I'm like, Kathy, thanks. That was you coming into this conversation, I think, blessing this. But I'm so grateful for you guys, so grateful that our paths have crossed, and just grateful for this friendship, across the years and across the miles. Leah, we got to do better. We're down the street. We get our schedules together.
Call me.
One last question. This one's a much more fun question. I know Karen and Carla have answered this question before, but I'm going to have to ask it again. What is your most memorable shoe and why? I'm going to give Leah and Tammy some time to think about it. Carla, you've got a cheat moment and had answered this question before. So I'm going to start with you.
Well, my most memorable shoe really is the first high heel shoe that I ever got to buy when my mom finally acquiesced after me asking a million times for a pair of these wood-heeled candies, circa late 70s, probably, like a clog high heel. And I probably have a bad back today because of those shoes. They were very high. They were way too high for somebody who was in junior high. I think I was maybe in 8th grade, my first pair of high heels. But I wore those shoes everywhere, and I would give anything to have them back because they traveled some of the earliest and most formative years of my life with me. And as I was coming into myself as a woman, as as somebody who was trying to figure out what they wanted to do and be. So those are some really great memories with those shoes.
I think they were back at one point, and
maybe you can find them today.
You might be able to find them.
They're not as good. They're like some sort of fake wood. It's not made out of a tree like they were back in the day.
It must have been really heavy.
They were.
Anyway, Leah, I'll go to you.
So I should have been prepared for this question since, by the way, your book, the theme, but I can tell you, after breaking my foot right before the pandemic, I have not worn heels, for 4 years, basically. So actually, I think it's kind of funny. My most memorable shoe is what I've been most frequently wearing outside of work these days, which is my Crocs. So I noticed there wasn't a chapter on Crocs in the book, but they're very comfortable. You can put cute little I don't know what those things are called, but little figurines or whatever in there. And one time I did wear them to work because I had injured my foot and I had to wear the Crocs to work, and the city manager looked at me and he looked down and I was like, I injured my foot. And he's like, oh no, don't worry. They're your dress Crocs because they have the little charms in there. And I was like, okay, we're good.
I love it. That's funny. You're like, there wasn't a chapter in Crocs. One of my clients is also a good friend, called me, who says, only you would write a book and call it something about shoes. And because he's always just teased me, he's been on the road with me. He's like, how many pairs of shoes did you bring? Like, there was all of these things. And then he texted me when he saw the book release. He was like, I feel really sorry for the other pairs of shoes in your closet that were not represented in this book. Like, you write a book about diversity, but you completely did not represent your entire shoe closet. Only you would say that. He goes, this is a lot of shoes, but still, I feel sorry for your shoes that are not represented. So, I don't know. It's good. Just like, I actually don't own a pair of Crocs, which is, anyway. My mom.
Well, maybe I have to get you some.
I'm in shock right now. Say that louder for the recording.
I don't own a pair of Crocs. I did. My mom has several pairs of Crocs. She likes the little sparkly ones and ones with the charms and whatever. I was at a conference in time. One of my clients was like, they were giving away Crocs, and he was like, I want one. And I was like, sure, I'll go get you one. But I never stored it because then he said, oh, I changed my mind. We're going to go somewhere else. And to this day, he holds it over my head. He was like, you never got me my pair of Crocs. I was like, you changed your mind. So, I have nothing against Crocs. I just don't own a pair. So,
I thought you said you owned a pair, and I was going to have like a moment where I needed to.
Likewise. I need a defibrillator.
Feel her forehead.
Tammy's like, see you later. Like, Tammy, I'll let you go.
Okay, so I have a lot of shoes, much to my spouse's chagrin. And so, but my favorite pair of shoes, and I still have them, they are a pair of cream, like kitten heel, but here's the thing. They have like faux seashells across the top of my foot. And then the heel is creamy patent leather.
Oh.
And the reason why these are my favorite shoes are because those were my wedding shoes.
Oh.
So 20 years ago, not 20, almost 20 years ago, be 19. No, it was 20 years ago when I decided I did not want to have a traditional wedding. I did not want to be bothered with people telling me how they didn't have their part of the money for the dress, or, oh, why didn't you invite your cousin Gino on your dad's side of the film? None of that. So I am always someone that is breaking the mold, thinking differently. People may not understand my thought process, but I'm going to show you how this is the absolute right way to do it. And so now everyone does destination weddings, but I did a destination wedding. I was going to be walking on the sand, so why not have cute shoes? So, though that's why those are my favorite shoes. And when I want to feel super cute, oh, and plus it's my favorite season. It's birthday season, July. Hello. So every July, you can find me on social media doing the most, because that's my birthday, my wedding date. That's just good planning right there. I stand on that. So yes, those are my favorite shoes because, all the things. They're unique, they're beautiful, they're fancy, and they're fabulous, just like me.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. And we lost Karen.
We
I'm
did.
here. Can you hear me?
We did. No worries. I think I still have hers. I think she's already done it twice. I think I had to make her do it twice as well. Or audio stuff. But thank you, ladies, so much for jumping on the podcast, for taking the time, for reading my book. Can't wait to Leah, talk a little bit more and so about that, which really means we have to find some ways to grab dinner or something and sign it. And just really just excited to just really have this. And so thank you so much. And let's not wait another 20 years for this reunion, please. And, so thanks. So cool.
Yeah. Thank you, Christine, for bringing us all
Yes,
together.
we really
Yes,
enjoyed
thank you
it.
for the reunion.
Yes. And much success to you in your
Yes.
book.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah,
All the best.
I don't know when I'm coming back to Cincinnati. Like, they didn't ask me to come back. I asked, the why. So I don't know. We'll see. But just go with the wind takes me at the moment. So, but we'll have to find an in-person reunion for sure. That is not digital. So, it's time.
It is.
Let me know when.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks,
Count me
ladies.
in.
Have a good night, and thank you again for your time. Thank you for listening to my podcast. I hope this has inspired you to continue the fight for equality, challenge stereotypes, and lift as we climb. We'd love to hear from you. Amplify the conversation on social media, following @DuquesseCD. For more information about me and my Amazon best-selling book, Walking in My Shoes, Shattering Glass Ceilings in Corporate America, check out DuquesseCD.com.